Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the latest from Bloodbound, Creatures of the Dark Realm, out May 28th on AFM Records. This album has 12 tracks, 45 minutes in length, and this is the band's 9th full-length studio album. They are a Swedish power metal band. Now for this album, I was expecting a structure that fell into that classic arena. Really high octane at the beginning, dipping in the middle perhaps with a couple of ballads, and then becoming high octane again at the end. A clear divide between start and finish with those softer tracks in the middle. I couldn't be further from the truth. There's 0 ballads on this record. This album is pretty much pedal to the metal. Sometimes you feel like that foot is coming a little bit off the gas, but it never completely comes off of it. The album never really stops. It may slow down, but it never really stops. It's an album that has great movement, great forward movement, a lot of fluidity, a lot of playability. The way it's structured together really transitions well from song to song, even though the album has some ebbs and flows built in, not just from track to track, but on the individual track basis. It's an album that never loses track of itself. You always feel like you know exactly where you started, where you are, and where you're heading. It's an album that really engages the listener from that perspective, keeps the listener engaged, and really allows you to follow exactly the roadmap that they build for you throughout the overall structure of this record. Once you get into the soundscape, this is classic power metal. I would say this is 50 shades of power metal. And what I mean by that is that you're not going to get one style, one approach, or one way of creating a power metal song and then copy and paste that across every single track on the record. I felt like they went in and they created an album that has that drive, that has that intensity in the sound, in the presence, but they changed ever so slightly the formula from song to song, still within that power metal umbrella, but changed it ever so slightly to give you a different perspective of what power metal could sound like. And this is enough to give you a perception of diversity. I don't feel like this is a diverse album. It's actually a very narrow pathed record in the way it's built, in the way that it's structured, in terms of how the elements come together. But this different 50 shades of power metal really gives you a sense, perhaps an unreal sense of diversity, but it's enough to allow you to feel different at every single turn and allow you to process the songs differently as well. So this makes the album less repetitive than it perhaps would have been otherwise. And I like that aspect of the soundscape. I really like how that interacted with the individual song structures, even if they had some similarities between them. The way they approached the elements was different from song to song, and that gave you a different feel, a different perception as you move down the line throughout this record. Also, the quality of the sound is unmistakable. I just love how this record sounds through and through. I mean, you need to create an album that has movement, that's engaging, that has great playability, but at the same time, the sound quality has to be there in order to define all the different pieces of the puzzle before you even get the full picture in front of you. And this record definitely does that. Within that soundscape, there are 3 parameters or 3 elements that really drive the experience, and that is the keyboards, drums, and guitars. All 3 for different reasons. I like the keyboards on this album because it's a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the piece of the puzzle. And more we're seeing in power metal bands, modern power metal bands, they're going too much into that arena. They're depending too much on the keyboard sound, and it's taking a little bit of the power away from the guitars, drums, and sometimes even vocals. I like how this album uses the keyboards, but it uses them, like I said, as a piece to the puzzle, not necessarily the defining piece. So that to me is the winning formula for an album that has this sound, this approach, this execution. Then you have the drums. The drums are very powerful. I always felt like the drums on this record are really blazing the path that allows everything else to travel upon. They're really the road. They ground the album at times. They don't allow the album to levitate, to become too light. So they bring some heaviness, they bring some strength to the forefront. But more often than not, they really work as the bulldozers that's just destroying everything in its path and building a perfectly fine road for everything else to come upon it and travel and really take you on the journey of the record. Then you have the guitars. The guitars are a little bit more eclectic. Perhaps eclectic is not the right word, maybe diverse, because they offer you different looks, different feels, but they're always the driver of the tracks. I always felt like they're really dictating where you're going with the song, which direction you're going to take, and how fast you're going to get to that final point, to that destination. I love the guitar sound on this album. It doesn't matter if we're talking about leads, melodies, or solos. The solos are impeccable. really adding something to the song. To me, that's what the purpose of the solo is. It's making the song better. It's adding something, being added value, and not just being there for the sake of being there. On this album, I always felt like the solos were in the perfect spot at the right time to really give the tracks the perfect energy that they needed, allowing the songs to become bigger, to have more volume, to have more presence. So the guitar work on this album is magnificent. I love everything about it. I love the sound. I love the execution. On top of it all, you have Patrick's vocals. Perfect vocalist for this band, for this record. For a record that has a lot of energy, he didn't let his voice get in the way of everything else that is happening, and rather added it as a tool, as an instrument to the overall big picture that they were painting with all 12 tracks. That's how his vocals came across to me. They always felt like they were filling in the right gaps in the right songs at the right time in order to make the songs bigger, to give them more volume, to give them more presence, and more important than not, to push that power metal drive to the next level and make some of these tracks very epic. I felt like his vocals added that aspect to it. They really elevated the tracks, they really elevated the essence of the tracks, the atmosphere that the songs had, and gave the album more of an epic feel within that power metal realm. Overall, this is exactly what you want out of a power metal record. I don't think you want anything less, you don't want anything more. You want an engaging album, you want a fun album to listen to, an album that's not overly complicated, an album that's really well defined within its parameters, that you can really understand where everything is coming from and what are they doing together and how they're integrating with one another. An album that makes you come back to it and listen to it over and over again because it's a fun experience. That's what I want from power metal, and that's what I got from this record. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, Death Will Lead the Way. I want to start with this track. The choir and the backing vocals are phenomenal. They add so much volume to this song, and every time that they used them throughout this record, it added volume. It made the songs feel epic. It made the songs feel big. Musically, this song packs a lot of energy, just has a lot of power. It really adds power into power metal. That's how this song feels. It just comes at you almost relentless. It's a little bit more relentless. It's a little bit bigger in the chorus. The song definitely gains a little bit more bandwidth. It becomes a little bit bigger in that chorus, which allows the chorus to also be a little bit more hooky, a little bit more catchy. It loses a little bit of that bandwidth in the verses, feeling a little bit more contained. But overall, it's such a big track that always feels like it's coming at you fast and faster. There's only two speeds: fast in the verses, faster in the chorus. I love this track. I love how it drives. I love the ebbs and flows that it has. Those slight changes in perception of speed that it has between verses and chorus really changes the eyesight of the listener. Great guitar solo. I mean, what else would you want from a great power metal song? Next, Kill or Be Killed, a song that has power but is not powerful. So it's a song that has a slower tempo. It's more of a mid-tempo track, but it still packs a punch. It still has a lot of strength. It still has some heaviness in it. The chorus is very bombastic. The backing vocals, once again, really ensure that the chorus gains volume, that the chorus becomes a little bit bigger, that has a little bit more presence. Overall, feels a little bit more controlled, feels like it's a more linear track. It doesn't have as much of ebbs and flows, but great melody, great sound, great drive all around. Last but not least, Face of Evil. Great energy in this song. The guitars and vocals become the drivers or your guides in the journey that this track has to offer. It's really hard to separate the two because I really felt that they work really well together in order to push this song forward, give this song a little bit of drive, power, and melody at the same time, really combining the essence that those two elements have, bringing them together and allowing the song to feel slightly bigger than what it really is. A song that has a little bit of a classic approach in terms of how it sounds, in terms of how it's structured, and how it's put together. Really engaging, really hooky, really catchy. Great both musically and vocally. You're going to get that hookiness, that catchiness, not just from a vocal perspective in the chorus, but also the way the music of the track itself comes around. It really allows you to remember this song and stay with this track engraved in your brain. So I love the straightforwardness that this track has to offer. Like I said, a little bit more of a simple, direct approach to it. This is it. This is Bloodbound with Creatures of the Dark Realm, out May 28th on AFM Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.